Aerial Aesthetics here, though you can call me Boog. I know a thing or two about air combat, so I'm here to tell you why you're wrong about fighters needing guns in modern air-to-air engagements. To preface things, this is my first full production video, so forgive me if things are unpolished. I'm welcoming criticism on the video itself because I know that the content I'm talking about is certainly going to draw regardless. Now without further ado, let's begin. When it comes to talking about fighter aircraft and their guns in air-to-air combat, Vietnam always seems to be the first thing to come up. Now, I'm not going to be talking much about this very misunderstood issue in this video, but if you want a detailed breakdown about the frequent misconceptions around gun kills and the Phantom being built without a gun, then go check out the Scottish Koalas video on the topic. I'll link it in the description. The guy does an excellent job of breaking down the reality of the Phantom's genesis and its utilization. But just to give some minor context to this video, I'll break down the most common misconception. The F-4 was designed without a gun for a reason. Despite the F letter designating the Phantom was primarily designed to be a high-speed interceptor aircraft. It was meant to use the early AIM-7 Sparrow and AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles for a fleet defense and airspace defense mission. Like every other interceptor of the time, it did not have an onboard gun. The only reason the F-4 had a gun pod installed and later integrated within the aircraft itself was because the Air Force realized that they could use the Phantom as a fighter, and thus they would have to give it a gun. It is not because the Phantom was inadequate without one. The role it was meant to fulfill simply just changed. I see this misunderstanding everywhere on the internet, but it's important to comprehend what actually happened. In order for us to understand an air-to-air gun's place, or their lack thereof, in modern air-to-air engagements, we need to understand what the next high-end air war will look like. While this is a video in and of itself, there are a few things we can break down and discuss. Now bear with me here, because we've got a lot of nerd stuff to go over before we get to why guns aren't useful in modern air-to-air engagements at all. I'm going to mainly be speaking from an American perspective here, but this applies to other air arms as well. Every aircraft, warship, helicopter, and missile are all connected. Data linking has undergone an absolute revolution in terms of capabilities over the past decade, and 5G technology is only enabling this even more. The United States Link 16 data link networks connects most U.S. military devices from across branches and provides a shared picture of the battle space. The amount of data that U.S. aircraft can share between each other is actually hard to fathom. It's to the point where an F-35 operating in a contested environment can guide a missile from an F-15 while the F-15 remains outside of the range of enemy fighters and air defense. This is the first big change that will become apparent in the next high-end air war. Just because you're out of missiles, that doesn't mean you're out of the fight. The second big change is with modern missiles. In the time since the Vietnam War, over 50 years have passed. Even since Desert Storm, 30 years have passed. Air-to-air missiles and the radars that guide them have gotten a lot better. Active electronically scanned array radars on both fighter aircraft and in some cases missiles have dizzying amounts of capability over the mechanically scanned radars that preceded them. These missiles rarely malfunction and they don't miss. They've been tested to perfection. The AIM-120 has been test-fired over 4,700 times, for example. And also, it has 12 confirmed air-to-air victories in combat. The current AMRAAM missile, which is the primary weapon of the U.S. Air Force and Navy, has been modernized to the AMRAAM-D model, which has a range well extending beyond 100 miles. This missile is already set to be replaced by the still very shadowy AIM-260 Joint Air Tactical Missile, or JATM, which will have double the range of the AMRAAM. Now the final big change isn't so much a change, but rather a reality in the way that modern aircraft fight battles. No aircraft ever fights alone. The one-on-one Top Gun style dogfights don't occur in modern realistic combat. A high-end conflict, say between China and the US, would never have less than 8 aircraft engaged at a time. It'll often be more than that. So with all this in mind, I'm going to break down why guns are obsolete in a modern, high-end aerial engagement, but also why there's no reason for us to get rid of them just yet. The most common argument purporting the use of a gun in modern air-to-air engagements is, oh, well, what happens if you run out of missiles? Now, this argument would have been relevant a decade ago when the entire US military wasn't linked through high-speed data links like the F-35's multi-function advanced data link. It's safe to say that the tip of the spear in any American engagement in the future will be stealth aircraft with data links, likely a mix of stealth drones, F-22 Raptors, and F-35s. F-22s will be providing top cover, while F-35s perform every type of mission imaginable, from suppression of enemy air defense, to strike missions, to air superiority missions. These aircraft, with their extremely powerful AESA radars, and with help from third-party assets like the aforementioned stealth drones, will be queuing AMRAAMs for every air-to-air kill they need to make. They will be mostly at standoff range from enemy fighters, rarely getting within visual of them. But stealth aircraft don't carry many air-to-air missiles, so when they run out, they'll have to go to guns in order to take out other aerial targets, right? Wrong. Through the data link, they will be able to request missiles from other fighters. For example, the F-15X, the newest US Air Force fighter, which is being procured right now. This F-15 has been described as a flying missile truck, and it will supply Raptors and F-35s with AMRAAMs and JATMs long after their own weapons bays are empty. Both the AMRAAM and the 2B JATM are extremely capable missiles. They will not suffer the same failures as missiles from even the early 21st century. With so many being carried by arsenal ship F-15s and F-18s, the frontline tip of the spear stealth fighters are always going to have missiles to call upon. This means that any modern US fighter will never have to close range and gun an enemy fighter. But let's suppose they did get within visual range. Long before they ever get close to within the roughly 1 mile effective range of the M61 Vulcan, they will be able to shoot a high-off boresight missile, or a Hobbs missile. These types of missiles, like the Sidewinder X for example, are very maneuverable and have a seeker head which is slave to the pilot's helmet-mounted display. This is a technology used across the US Navy and Air Force, and these missiles will finish a dogfight, if you can even call it that, long before the aircraft gets within range of the gun. Finally, like I said before, no aircraft fights alone. Even if 2 aircraft were to make it to the merge, both of them will be under the watchful eyes of other aircraft on both sides, who will be trying to get missile shots off on the enemy fighter before their comrade is killed. 2 aircraft coming within the merge in a modern, high-end conflict is not only improbable, I'd be willing to wager it's damn near impossible. There is a frequently repeated modern adage which fighter pilots have come up with, and it goes, if you're within visual range, you've already made a mistake. If you've made that mistake, you won't even have time to get within visual range. Any fighter pilot is going to be dead already. But just because guns aren't useful in air-to-air engagements, that doesn't mean they aren't useful at all. Close air support is as important as ever in both low-end security operations and high-end peer state wars. No weapon is better suited to this than a fighter-mounted cannon, and there are hundreds of A-10 pilots who will affirm that statement. This is a reality that's understood by the US military, and it's why the F-35A still carries an internal gun, and why the B and C model F-35s have gun pods available to them. The GAU-22, which is the gun that the F-35 carries, is also optimized for air-to-ground rather than air-to-air. The M61 Vulcan, which was used in all US fighters preceding the F-35, had a firing rate of 6,000 rounds per minute, or 6,600 in the case of the M61A2. While the F-35's GAU-22 has a firing rate of only 3,300 rounds per minute. This is so the pilot doesn't expend as many rounds on a ground target as they would if they were shooting at a fighter. Where a high rate of fire is essential for scoring hits, that isn't the case with hitting stationary ground targets. So while guns aren't useful at all for air-to-air engagements, they do have a purpose in air-to-ground scenarios, and we should keep them around. I'm sure many of you will disagree, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it in the comments. It's bound to be good discussion. So, thanks for being with me in my first video of this type. Hopefully my next is going to improve in quality. I'm open to hearing what you guys have to think. And I'm going to paste my sources down below in the description so you guys can check them out for yourself. And also, do check out the Scottish Koalas video that I mentioned above on the F4. It's a great video, and the guy's super smart. Also, I wanted to give a huge thanks to the Warzone and Tyler Rogoway. They have an awesome site where they post the most detailed articles on defense and anything aviation related. And while they didn't help me directly at all with this, their site has been an amazing resource. So do check them out. I'll link them down below. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.